Hello, everyone. All right, so we went through that first part pretty quickly, and I want you to know that then what we're going to do now is Paul is going to get to sit and look at the slides as they go by. We will probably skip through some of the explanatory slides, and he will tell you stories about the glass that you'll see. So, and then we'll have time for questions. So think of your questions, and we'll run around and get you in a little while. All right, so is almost everybody back? We said 11. Oh, it is time. All right. Oh, fellas, I'm so sorry. I forgot to ask you. Could we move this this boom to get Paul up here? Thank you.
I could do it from right here, maybe, if you want to.
Yeah, he's just going to move the boom stand, so you don't have to hold the mic because it gets pretty heavy. Right in front of him, please. Did everybody enjoy that first part? Pretty amazing stories. Well, there's a lot more to come. All right. So, oh, I forgot. There's also one more thing. So, Paul, we're going to go through the slides, and then we're going to get to see a short 9-minute video of actual people working in the glass house. That's going to be pretty exciting, too. And then we'll do questions.
That's fine.
Okay, thanks.
I'm going to lead off by apologizing. The program we just did was the first time we had ever tried to run it live. And I had no ability to see what was on the screen, and it was, as usual, I was running my mouth off before other people were seeing what was going on. So we're going to catch up here a little bit with some of the slides were on there, and I can explain what they were all about. That is the thing on the right side there is an actual advertisement from 1889 for the Tiffin Glass Company. The carts there on top had a monkey sitting on top of them and were used for toothpicks and matches. That company is the original Tiffin Glass Company, and they're the ones that went out of business first. We actually have those 3 carts on display at the museum. This is Sneath Glass Story, and that list of railroads on the right-hand side are the companies that they actually made their embossed lantern globes for. Now, why we can't come up with one for the museum, I have no idea. I have railroad fans looking around to see if they can go to one of their meets somewhere and find me one of those globes. But it is an integral part of what that whole factory operation out there was. Mr. Sneath was supposedly Tiffin's first millionaire, and he had his hands in just about everything very early on. There's the actual embossed globe for the New York Central Railroad. Belgian glass, and I related the fact that some of that may be out in the New Bronze Falls area of Texas. We simply don't know, and I wouldn't know now how to put a tracer on it. In that 5 years of natural gas, $35,015 in land value was for A.J. Beatty and Sons to build their factory. That's a representation of what the factory looked like in a painting that we have down at the glass house hanging above the couch. And it's significant in this respect because on the right-hand side, high up, you will see some houses there, brick houses that are a part of those 30 that were built for the workers when they came to Tiffin. And as I said, 27 of those houses are still out there being resided in. I had a big question when I was putting this all together. These factories and all this stuff was built out of brick. Where in the heck were the brick ovens at? And where did they get the bricklayers at? This is over a period of a year, year and a half, this stuff was all built. Postcard that we have at the museum. There's A.J. Beatty and Sons glass, 1889 to 1891. And people come in and always say how they think it looks so modern, so up to date. And I agree. There's a couple little side stories that go with it. On the third and fourth shelves, there's what's called hobnail glass. The story with hobnail glass, Hobbs Bruckner Glass Company of Wheeling, West Virginia. Mr. Hobbs invented that style of glass. He patented it and sold rights to other companies to manufacture it, where he got residuals back for every piece that was made. Now, I can find 5 different glass companies who made hobnail glass, calling it something different, but it's the same pattern, and I wondered how many $1 million he made off of that. There's the shield for United States Glass Company, same shape and form with USG on it, that was changed over then to become Tiffin glass. By the way, if you have one of those Tiffin glass shields in a different color than the black and gold, you have a reproduction that was done by the Tiffin Glass Collectors Club as collectibles 12, 15 years ago. Early glass, vase on the right side is in the cabinet on the left side. We had a group of 4 people come into the museum one day 10, 15 years ago, carrying that vase. They all lived out of town, but the vase was here in Tiffin in the family's estate. It was made for their mother and father as a wedding gift by one of the workers out at the factory. The workers did not get a bonus one year. They were told to take a piece of glass. He took that one because he knew his friends were getting married. So when the kids came in and brought it to us, they said, we'd like to leave it here so when we come back to Tiffin, we can come and see it. And nobody wants to take it home and leave it there. We agreed we'd love to have it on display. And they said, by the way, that's Mom and Dad's marriage license inside the vase. Another piece of glass that came to us, similar story, elderly lady, boy, she was about 4'5", came through the door, had her daughter with her, carrying this glass. Wanted to know if we would take it. It was a wedding gift for her parents. We said, sure, and we happened to have that original print photograph on display at the museum. It is the one that was used to advertise that glass 100+ years ago. She explained the similar situation. Nobody wanted to take it home, but we'd like to leave it there. We appreciated it greatly and put it on display. She said, by the way, I'm 99 and a half years old, and I was the oldest child of this couple. She passed away about 3.5 years ago. I did some digging around and found that the building that the Tiffin Glass Museum is in was the family's business back in the 40s and 50s. So the vase came back to its home. U.S. Glass Book on the right side, there's a lot of stuff that's in there that had been misidentified as Tiffin for years. We have the book down at the museum. It was done by Schaefer Books and is available, I think, still in some places. On the left-hand side is an original advertisement of some glass that was made by the United States Glass Company. The Tiffin Shield, the original black and gold one, story goes with this. Nancy and I were spending a winter out west. We traveled back in those days and stayed in Arizona a lot because that's where my mother was raised on a homestead. We were in Bisbee, Arizona, which was a mining town in southern Arizona that you had to drive through a tunnel to get to. It was a copper and gold mining town, very wealthy in its time. They had at one time 6 jewelry shops and 2 department stores in this little town. We were shopping around because of the number of antique shops. We walked into one that had been a former bank, and there sits this shield on the shelf. I called back to Tiffin and talked to Ruth Heminger at the Glass Museum and said, Ruth, is this worth anything? She said, yes, it's original. How much do they want for it? I told her, and she says, you better steal it right now. Then that is the shield that was used on Tiffin glass as when it was being sold. Now, there were several versions of that shield, that being one of the later ones, I think. But some of them said Tiffin made, some of them said Tiffin, some of them had a T on. But it was often put on as a part of the sales showing you were buying Tiffin glass. If you go into a shop somewhere and see that shield sticking on a piece of glass, think about it a little bit, because there were a lot of shields went out of that glass house after the factory closed that is being stuck on other people's glass. So you need to know exactly what you're looking at. Early Tiffin crystal, this would have been 1920s probably. And up until that time, most of the glass was crystal and most of it was hand cut. They had cutters working in the shop all the time, and they were the skilled workers that were there, and you have to understand how this glass was done. We have a large photo of one of the original glass workers up there showing him looking through one side of the glass to the bottom of the glass where the cutting wheel was actually touching the glass. It was art in the highest degree, and most of the time it was done freehand. Other times it was marked out so they could follow a simple pattern. But it's beautiful glass, and that was the way most of it was made until the etching glass period comes into play. Etching glass was done with the use of acid. The 1938 Art Deco stuff, we have quite a bit of Art Deco down there. This is the Cascade line. The Crackle line, similar area. That glass is blown and hot on the end of a gathering stick before the handle and spout and so forth were put on it. And while it's hot, and I'm talking 1900 to 2100 degrees, it's dipped in water where it fractures but doesn't come apart. It's then refired and seals up. So you have a different decoration in every piece of glass. No two will be alike. There's my pet. I often tell people it would make a beautiful decanter to serve someone else their liquor in. Duncan Miller glass. Tiffin bought out Duncan Miller, which was in Washington, Pennsylvania, in 1955. They were a very good glass company. Unfortunately, they got caught up in that removal of tariffs by Eisenhower in the mid-50s, and they couldn't keep up with production demands, and they didn't change much. They kept using the same original stuff over and over. Well, Tiffin bought them out, bought all the trademarks, got the molds, and even 40 workers reportedly moved to Tiffin to begin making what was called Duncan Miller by Tiffin. They never reproduced exactly what Duncan Miller did because they never used the same colors. They only did colors that were in the Tiffin blends, and that became 25% of the profit margin for the company. Green Fantasy and mica glass, both from the late 50s or late 40s into the 50s. Very decorative, very pretty. The mica glass is on the top shelf. There are 6 pieces there. It's clear glass that is cased in green, and while it was hot, the element mica was sprinkled all over it. It was a dud. It did not sell. It is only believed to have made about 2.5 months and never ceased or never made to be produced again. If you come across a piece of it now, make sure your wallet's full. 1950s colors. It's beautiful stuff, especially if you still have shag carpet on the floor. This is called Tiffin Twilight. It became Tiffin's most popular color. Colored glass is made by adding metal oxides into the mix of the silica and other chemicals. The metal oxide used to create this color is called neodymium oxalate. It's on the test, and you have to spell it right before you can leave today. Neodymium oxalate is something probably most of you have in your house, sticking on the side of your refrigerator. It's what they make magnets out of. And the secret behind this is that lovely lilac color. When it's put under fluorescent light, it changes to blue. The Empress line from 1959, made about 2.5 years, I think. We have a nice display of the Empress there. It's beautiful glass, a lot of combinations of colors. And when you think about adding deep red glass with clear crystal or another glass, bonding them together was really something you had to be careful of. Your colors had to be, your temperatures had to be just right in order for them to bond. When Ed Goshi and I and a couple other people got together to redo the cabinets several years ago, we put together 24 pieces of Empress line. And I thought, man, this is a gorgeous, almost complete display. Well, I was 40 pieces short. We've picked up a little bit since that, but it always attracts beautiful eyes, and it's very decorative and very pretty. Celebrity glass. Okay, who were the celebrities? On the top shelf is the president's White House glass. Franklin Roosevelt and Jacqueline Kennedy both bought glass for the White House, U.S. glass, Tiffin in particular. Below is a green plate and a goblet, and you probably recognize the face of the guy. That's Elvis. Elvis had it custom made using the Palais Versailles design on green glass. Now, Grace Kelly is in the picture right above that green plate. When she married Prince Rainier of Monaco, she bought complete sets of Tiffin glass to take back to the castle with her. There's Princess Grace's pattern. I was told that she bought 24 table settings, and that is one table setting. The prince had a buck or two. There's Elvis up close. There's a story that goes with that. One of the salesmen from Tiffin was at a national glass show in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where a lot of those shows were done. He was approached by a gentleman that said, "I want that gold pattern put on green glass." And the salesman said, "I'm sorry, sir, we don't make that." The gentleman said, "No, I want that gold pattern put on green glass." And the salesman again said, "We don't make that." A checkbook came out, and the salesman said, "We can make that." And it was Elvis Presley's representative who had the checkbook. These glasses on the bottom shelf, 1967, Tiffin had its sesquicentennial celebration. Metal Gold Dairy Company was here in Tiffin, Ohio at that time, and they wanted to do something special for it. They had the glass house make these table tumblers with the president's faces from the state of Ohio on one side and the house they lived in on the back side. There are 8 of those glasses if you have a complete set. Now, what was nice about them is you could get them delivered to your door full of cottage cheese for 67 cents a piece. Governor Jim Rhodes at his 1963 reopening of the glass house's Tiffin Art Glass. And the emblem for the Tiffin Art Glass Company. And pay attention to that Tiffin emblem that was on there, the Tiffin script, as they call it, because it'll come into play here in a little bit. Continental Can Company. Stemware encompasses time frame of Continental Can and Interpace Corporation and Tiffin Art Glass. We have about 1,200 pieces of stemware on display laid out chronologically as best we can. And as you get in there and start walking around, you'll see little wooden blocks sitting on the shelves beside the glass or around the glass. And those wooden blocks are original printing blocks from the 1920s and 30s used to make glass catalogs, and they represent pieces we do not have on display. It's difficult to know how many pieces we do not have on display. Stickers that were used on the so-called Franciscan crystal. They put a variety of them on, and many of them had the name of the crystal's designation, such as minuet or something like that. Interpace Corporation glass that was sold with the Franciscan china. And I mentioned remembering what that Tiffin script looked like. These boxes are completely covered with Tiffin script. Interpace Corporation contracted companies in Italy and in, I believe, Yugoslavia to make glass. They put them in these boxes and called them Tiffin and shipped them back to the United States to be sold in department stores and so forth. The only thing that's Tiffin about those things is the name on them. The outlet store, located out on 4th and Vine Street, is where much of the glass was cleared out in later years. And there was just a young lady up talking to me before we sat down here again that worked in that outlet store. I remember going in there as a fairly young man and looking around and thinking, man, could I have fun in here with a shotgun.
Oh.
Toll, Tiffin, Toll Corporation owned it for just over a year, and they're the ones that created it and closed it. It probably was a blessing because glass companies were falling all across the country. It's my understanding that the final day of production in the factory, there were less than 50 workers there. Glass show, that was just this past July. The National Depression Glass Association, which is based out in Kansas, has come to Tiffin a couple of times to put on a national show. This year they had 24 dealers from around the country here selling all kinds and types of glass. We're already planning for next year for the Tiffin Glass Collectors Club show, which is normally done in June at the Tiffin Middle School. We'll be seeing advertisements and information on that in the not too distant future. Picture from one of the shows. Tiffin Glass Collectors Club, located 2527 South Washington Street. The museum has been there 26 years come this November, and we continue to go on. We don't charge admission to come in. We have glass for sale, and we take donations at the door.
Can you get those ornaments?
Those ornaments, we have some this year. Our sources are running out, unfortunately. They aren't made in Tiffin, but they are decorated here.
Oh, do you want to see if there's anything else? Oh, well, we didn't put it in. Yeah, part of it will be in the archives. Okay. Yeah, just let you read this. Yeah, I mean, well.
Tiffin Glass Collectors Club was organized in 1985, included people who had retired from working at the glass house, along with local collectors. The group initially met at the Seneca County Museum. An archive was begun in 1992 with the purpose of setting up a museum. Glass Collectors Club has members throughout the United States. Originally, more than 300 members were involved, and unfortunately, we're down around a little over 100 paid memberships now. That's the front entrance to the place. And that's a sign that's mounted out on one of the pillars on the front stoop. The museum was opened in 1998 by the Glass Club. The shop opened the following year. Museum focuses on the history of glassmaking in Tiffin, preserving documents and displaying large assortments of glass, as well as historical items, photos, and memorabilia. It holds over 3,500 pieces of stemware, tableware, and decorative pieces, as well as wooden stamps representing patterns not yet owned. Visitors are welcome from noon to 4 p.m. Wednesday through Saturday. Nancy and I are usually there on Saturday, but that's not an excuse for you to come in. The museum and shop are staffed solely by volunteers. Rent and utilities are paid from donations and sales. Archival, we have a couple of cabinets full of archival supplies. These are tools and equipment used to make the glass and decorate the glass, including cutting wheels and shields for sandblasting. And I think we have one particular shield here with a picture of it. Nope.
We will.
We will?
Oh, that's the.
Oh, there's the Pepsi can. That gets a lot of attention because most people never realized that Pepsi-Cola could be served at a fountain. That would have been pure syrup, would have been put through a fountain and had water added to it to give you your Pepsi-Cola drink. In that picture, it's probably the most valuable piece there. More of the archives. There's swords down on the bottom. There's a couple of them there that are not Tiffin. They have a large Tiffin shield sticker on them. They were made in China. They're knockoffs coming in, being sold at flea markets and so forth that are not original. Etching plates used to transfer the design from with the use of wax and then dipping the glass in acid where the acid eats that design into the glass. Those are 100+ years old. We have one there that's for a battleship, the glassware for an admiral on a battleship. And the bottom row that you can see there, the third etching plate from the left is.
We'll see it.
Okay.
Sorry, we'll have a picture.
Oh, we'll have.
I think we have a picture of the Pumbe. I'm not sure.
Couldn't be. Well, go back to the one that was just before that, I think, or after that.
Oh.
There you go. That says Pennsylvania Cottage. Does that ring a bell with anybody?
Yeah.
That's a junior home. The Pennsylvania Cottage out there, it's the only one we could think of that had their glass specifically marked with their name on it. But that's a sandblasting shield to do the glass for the Pennsylvania Cottage. Molds, we own about 25. There are maybe a dozen on display at the museum. Those were used to produce the glass. They were both for blown glass and for pressed glass. By the way, there's Duncan Miller with the salt shaker in it. There is a place here in Tiffin where there, I think, are about 2,000 more of those molds that are privately owned. Better picture showing what they are. Blowpipes, gathering sticks, we have some on display. There's one of those etching plates. Read what it says. Put-in Bay, 1896 souvenir. If that is indeed when those plates were made, it's the oldest etching plates that we can recognize having been done. And somewhere out there, there's some glass with that etch on it that I'd like to have for the museum. Okay, there is a floor plan, a basic layout of the glass house after the warehouse was put on in 1897. Those were insurance maps used to identify what was being insured by the company. On another map that is not on display there at the museum, we have across the street from the factory a dormitory. We believe that dormitory is where those orphan kids from New York stayed and were taken care of by the Ursuline nuns. Shields, equipment, tools on display.
What is the delicious healthy for?
Probably for a milk bottle.
Is that some of the gold plating you talked about?
Well, there's some gold decorations on the top of that opal glass, and opal was just a fancy name for saying milk glass. That's a front window that was on display up until a couple of weeks ago, using the cobalt blue glass. It has been changed over now. We're fortunate that we have somebody that really knows how to do layouts and decorations. His name is Ed Goshi. He does a beautiful job doing the decorations in our front window. That's an interior shop of the sales room. We have cabinets on both sides and down the center. And in the back room, we have probably 700 or so pieces of hand-blown and pressed stemware made at the factory. And we actually sell it cheaper there than you can go to Walmart and buy Chinese glass. Pictures of the glass in the sales shop. How to care for your glass. The biggest hint I can tell you is if you have crystal, never wash it in a washing machine. Dishwasher. Well, washing machine works too. More information, and you want to tour the museum, come down. We're open 4 days a week from noon to 4 p.m. If you want a special tour, call on the glass telephone line, and we can make arrangements for special tours.
Okay, I think it's time now. We've got time to play that video.
Okay, we have an original filmed video of glass being made at the Glass House, I believe circa 1968. I won't say for sure. It came to us as a part of a package of advertising done by one of the companies that owned the Glass House that had it made up. I don't hear that movie projector running.
There's just one moment. Are you thinking of your questions? This is only 9 minutes, so we'll have plenty of time for some questions.
Where did the original glass blowers come from?
At one time, they had 11 nationalities working at the factory. The earliest ones that I can identify by nationality were Italians, but they came from Belgium, they came from Germany, throughout Europe.
Okay, while we're waiting, does anybody else have another question? Oh, nope, here it is. All right.
LBI 1955, 56.
American crafts have passed from region to region, spread out in a growing land. Here in Tiffin, Ohio, the United States Glass Company carries forward the age-old glassblower's art. Today, that art is served by exacting scientific standards. The finest crystalware begins as sand, soda ash, potash, lime, niter, and leads. Each with a vital function is selected according to the highest degree of quality. The finest silica sand must be absolutely pure. First it travels over magnets which remove iron particles. Here again, not too much, not too little. Just the exact amount of each element. Every batch of material that goes to the furnace is tested. Now it is ready for the magic of the fire and the craftsman. The fire heats the highest quality clay furnace to 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, carefully controlled day and night. In 24 hours, sand and chemicals have cooked to a molten mass, refined and crystal clear. Then skilled artistry takes over. Artistry and amazing coordination. A rhythmic partnership of eyes and hands and timing. This is the Hokey Pokey team, the Dinky Shop. Quaint words to describe such skilled individuals. The gatherer collects just the right amount of molten glass. The blower's lungs then begin a song in crystal. The stem presser forms an exactly estimated amount in the mold. The footcaster shapes a base. The actions of this team are calculated, and then so often repeated that they seem to become spontaneous. All of them together, the team and their assisting handle gatherers, who transfer material from craftsman to craftsman, seem almost to work like a machine. But appearances are deceptive. Only individual character and responsibility and pride can apply the exacting skills that are required here. Every piece of glass must meet exact standards, and no machine can do this. The eye, the hand, the breath, and senses of space and timing, all must be freshly brought to bear each time. It's a continuous cycle, related to the work of other eyes and hands, which have carefully cut the iron molds that guide the molten glass into delicate shapes. Many forms can't be pressed by mold. They must be shaped entirely by the hand of an artist. It's called offhand. Here this means free and disciplined. A special fire is used to keep the forming glass exactly flexible. They call it the glory hole, and no wonder. Now for something unique and breathtaking. A sculptor's masterpiece for your table. Beauty inherent in frozen liquid. Imagination taking wings. Now begins the journey to finished glassware. First it must be cooled. Then it must go through the first of many selections or examinations. Here, as with silver and china, nothing defective passes by trained eyes. A diamond point, more heat, and then a dexterous hand. The crystal is being trimmed. Other skilled fingers take over to smooth out surfaces and to prepare for the cutter or engraver. He uses uses the lines as a guide, but only his sense of touch, of exactly right pressure, of twist and turn, can keep the cutting clean and expressive. A final selection, and then the ultimate destination, your dining room table. Tomorrow's treasures for our homes, wrought by ageless skills which have come down to us, inherited and recreated by our Native American craftsmen. The crystal that gives the purest musical tone when you tap it. The china, whose lustrous translucence proclaims its quality. The sterling, whose delicate patina grows even more subtly beautiful with age and use. These are fine American things, expressions of a kind of living and working that extends beyond our so-called machine age. We can share the pride with which they are made, and we can enjoy the great variety of styles and patterns created to grace our tables. Gertrude Broussard, tableware editor of the American Home magazine, offers suggestions to fit your table, your mood, your occasion, whether it calls for a traditional formal setting or for something informal, or one with a modern elegance. There are endless combinations, each one reflecting the basic harmony inherent in beautiful things. Is this really such a push-button age? Not according to what we've just seen. And these arts and skills are not for just a few as in centuries past, but for all of us in America today. Here is true modern craftsmanship. Toll sterling, Lenox china, Tiffin glass. Useful beauty for our daily lives. If you want to know more about the things I've shown you, write to me. Nancy Carter, care of Americans at Home, Princeton, New Jersey. Goodbye.
Wow. All right. We have several minutes left, so if you have questions, just put your hand up and we will scurry around and find you. Yes.
They mentioned using lead in the production of the glass as one of the substances. Were there specific health problems that the glass workers faced due to the content of the material they were working with?
Not with the lead, no. It was a lead oxide. When you picture lead, you're thinking of tire weights and fishing sinkers and stuff. This is quite a bit different. This was called red lead oxide, and it was a broken down chemical form. But despite what people keep saying, there is no danger in drinking out of a crystal glass. And crystal, by definition, must have 20% lead oxide.
Thank you.
It appears that they were sharing those pipes while they were blowing the glass. How often did they have to shut down a line because of illness?
I don't really know how to answer that because the lines were basically not shut down. They would interchange the pipes. They had more than one they would be using, of course. The biggest problem they had was the buildup of heat in the molds, and they would often have to interchange the molds also. But the biggest secret with blowing glass was never inhale.
Yes.
Do you know how they got the bubbles in the paperweights?
Well, there was three different methods. One of them was described to me as being a golf ball shape, but instead of having indentations on it, had bubbles. And they would form glass around that, remove it, then finish the piece, and while it was cooling, those bubbles would remain. Now, other methods of putting bubbles in glass involved using a ice pick dipped in water and inserted inside of hot melting glass, and the steam would expand a bubble inside. I'd also heard that wood was used soaked in water to create a bubble in a stem or in a part of a glass. I've never seen the process done, but I can imagine when you're sticking something that's wet inside of 1900 degrees, you're going to get a bubble.
Anyone else? Yes.
We learned that Tal closed the factory because of the lack of interest in the glass. I had always heard that it was the depletion of the natural gas reserves.
The natural gas reserves in Tiffin were not a problem. In 1893, they did have a problem with natural gas, and they had a contract with Sun Oil Company out of Toledo for fuel oil, and the fuel oil was used to fire. Later, in 1897, I believe, they had gas struck on the Crum Farm north of Tiffin. They put a well in and laid a pipeline in that came into the factory, and they didn't have a problem with that afterward.
Anyone else? I'd like to know how many people in this room worked at the factory or had a family member who worked at the factory. Wow, quite a few. Yeah, that's really neat. So, does anybody have a story that you'd like to tell? Good.
I'll tell one. When I was a lot younger, yesterday, well, actually, I started working out there at the outlet store, became the outlet store when I was 14. My uncle worked in sales, and he asked me to come out, and really shouldn't have worked there. It was kind of like under the table, so don't repeat it now. Anyway, my uncle was Carl Ossenheimer, who later on retired and developed what they called Topex, which was Tiffin Old Pattern Exchange. Since he was a salesman, he knew a lot of the places where Tiffin glass was sold. Therefore, if they had remaining inventories, he would get it from like Macy's, Lazarus, Marshall Fields, whatever, jewelry stores, and bring it and purchase it, and then people would get a hold of him if they, broke a particular piece, etc. And so that was one of them. Anyway, as a kid growing up there, I did a lot in the outlet store, but also then was educated to give tours. So I gave tours of the operation during summers, breaks, coming back from college, that type of thing. Everybody was always fascinated going into what we called, at that back then, was the blowing room, to see this huge, 15-pot furnace, and everybody working around it was just an amazing thing to do. But the interesting story is when Interpace bought it, it's kind of similar to the story you talked about, CW Senior. So when Interpace bought it was when CW Junior was there, Bill Carlson. And I was going to give a tour, me and a couple other people, and of course Bill was, and Martha Ziegler, and we each took a small group, in there, because when you go in the blowing room, it was really loud. It was hard to hear, so you had a small group around you. And at that point, Bill Carlson obviously didn't learn from his dad, because he went in the day before or whatever, sometime before, and said, we got this company coming in, let's all shine. Well, they did. Walked in, of course, there were some people with formals on and suit coats, just like they did, years ago. And, he had to laugh. He did not get too upset. It was kind of a comical thing. So that's all.
Thank you, Teresa. Anyone else? All right. Oh, yes.
Paul wondered where all the bricks came from to build the factory and the homes, and it just occurred to us, could they have come from Bascom?
It's a possibility. I don't know that they were making bricks there. That was mostly a tile manufacturer, as I remember. But the bigger problem would have been, think of the time frame. How would they have gotten here? Horse and wagon? Or would it have been by train? Somewhere along the line, they had a system set up where they could get massive amounts of bricks in here in short periods of time. I want to make another comment. They were talking in that film about the guys working in the hokey pokey. Where do you think that name for the dance came from? These guys were in such rhythmic operation that they never got in each other's way. They put the left foot here and they put the right foot there, and they would work around that glass blower to make everything was done. A few years ago, I was doing some information on contract works between the employees and the company. And the employees, not the skilled workers, not the blowers, the decorators, stuff, but the guys that did the grunt work actually were negotiating as the hokey pokey. That was their trade name.
Fascinating. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Vicki for a minute. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I'm going to come around behind you.
What streets would I find these 27 houses on?
7th, 8th, and 9th Avenue. Now, some of them are in disguise because they've had porches put on them and aluminum siding and stuff put on them. But if you look straight at the front of them, the way they're laid out with the windows and the front entry door and stuff, they're all exactly alike. One other little item before I shut up. If you have paperwork involving the glass house that you don't want, we love to have that kind of stuff to continue our archives so this stuff can be preserved for long term.
Yeah, and don't forget that there's papers for you to take home. If you're interested in any of that, it's on the table to your left as we leave.
Let's give Paul a round of applause, and Nancy, because Nancy, I know you had a lot to do with putting this together. Paul, I know you were very hesitant in speaking, and you did a wonderful job. So thank you so much for being here with us today. It was fabulous. Nancy didn't speak, but she could have probably stepped in and helped out, I'm sure. So again, we want to remind you, please fill out your surveys. There's a front and a back, so make sure you can fill in suggestions. I think we shared in the first week. We take all of your suggestions very seriously, and Mimi keeps track of them in a spreadsheet, and then the curriculum committee sifts through it, and that's how we get topics. And glass in Tiffin, Ohio was one of the most requested topics last year, so that's why we talked Paul into doing this for us today. Make sure you turn in your name tags as well, please. Next session is going to be how nonprofit organizations support and benefit seniors. We'll have directors of United Way of North Central Ohio and the Tiffin Seneca United Way, the AmeriCorps Seniors RSVP program, the Allen Erie Senior Center, and North Central Area Transit, which is formerly known as SCAT, here to talk about what their agencies do and to answer questions. So think about that. Each person has 20 minutes to speak, so will we save the questions for the end, or?
We'll probably have them answer questions before we move on to the next person.
So have your questions ready.
Yeah. Okay, so please check out our upcoming events and reminders on the side of your session page. We look for things that we think will be fun for you to do, including sporting events and other things that are happening around Tiffin and the close area. So we hope that you enjoy that part of that session page. As always, oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, if you have questions, call or email Vicki or me anytime. Okay, I am on golf cart duty, so I will see some of you outside. And as you're leaving today, I'm going to do a shameless promotion. Shar Pope, who is not here today, and Vicki Ohl, who is here today, Sally McDonald and I have a piano quartet called Piano Stachio. We're doing a concert at Heidelberg on the 22nd. There are going to be 2 performances at 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock, and Shar made some flyers for us. So they will be on the table on your way out, so please take one. And if we've been working on this music for about 2 years, so we would love to share it with you. The tickets are $10, and all of the proceeds will go to Berg Bravo, which is the Heidelberg Music and Theater Program. All right, that is it. Let me see, I think, sorry. 8 hands, 8 hands. Mostly we'll be on 2 9-foot Steinway Grands, but our last piece is going to be a nice surprise. All right. All right, have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you soon next week.